Starfield. I know, right? Hi, my name is Kenneth Vigue, and if you're watching this, you're here for my review and first impressions of Starfield. I was honestly really honored to be considered for it, especially as this will be my first video review of any game ever. Now, I know that this is very likely to be the biggest and most well-covered video game of probably the last few years. So I know you're going to be watching a lot of videos. So, with respect for your time. So firstly, I don't want to keep you waiting any longer. I try and temper my expectations for any experience. But for me, Starfield far, far surpassed anything promised, anything teased, or anything told to us by the Bethesda Game Studios team. This game made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. And beyond that, it ticked every box and got inside me in a deeply personal way. Mark my words, this is a game I will be playing and many will be playing for decades to come. For storytellers and role players, it's the ultimate sandbox, with a wide variety of worlds with different moods and aesthetics. For modders, this game is going to be absolutely insane to mod. Literally insane. My metric on how much I love a game is determined on if I spend every minute of work thinking about it in the back of my head, and even having dreams about it. And I did have Starfield dreams. Twice. In one, I was flying a hot dog. In the other, I was living inside a Blockbuster video store on Old Earth with Gary Busey as a sidekick. But I digress. So before the long-form video review, if you're looking for the TLDR right up front, this game gets my stamp of approval, 10 out of 10. And I had a hard time even trying to think of something I didn't like for the purposes of this review. Cliff Notes version done, here's the long-form meat and potatoes of my experience. And fear not, it's spoiler-free. I'm going to break down my specific thoughts of Starfield, but a few rules of the road. I'm not really a video game reviewer, so my review merely comes from someone who's been playing Bethesda games for half my life. I'm a storyteller, and man oh man will I have some stories to tell you. I don't really play space games, so my approach to playing this is about as virgin as you can get. But I actually think that's a good thing. I love Bethesda games. I have for a long time. And I do love every beautiful, unintended feature I've experienced since Fallout 3. They've given me some beautiful fodder for writing with the Chad podcast. But believe me when I tell you this, not one bug, not one glitch, not one dropped frame, stutter, or crash in my entire playthrough. At the time of this recording, 34 hours of gameplay later, and I did not crash once. Not once. It's important to note here also that I have a really tweaked out PC for work, using an RTX 3090 Founders Edition card to do all the heavy lifting of space. So my comment here is asterisked, in that I can only speak to my experience on my own equipment. Lastly, but most importantly, I don't read reviews before deciding I want to experience something for myself, be it a movie or a video game, because personal experience is really subjective. I'm here because of Fallout 76, a game I deeply love, but many didn't at launch. Many of whom now do almost 5 years later. My point here is to hell with the tribalism of console of choice, or letting myself or any creator tell you what you should and shouldn't like. You're a beautiful, intelligent person who can decide that for yourself. So go get this game, put on your best spacesuit, or stick a Kenmore refrigerator box over your gaming chair and make spaceship mouth noises with your bad self. But decide for yourself. Inan Zur, the man, the myth, the legend. I remember the first notes of the very first Bethesda game I played when the ominous tones of the Fallout 3 theme echoed about my bedroom. The man is a legend in gaming whose scores have set the stage, tone, and amplified every moment in so many iconic games for Bethesda and beyond. From the opening of Skyrim to Fallout 4 and, yes, even Fallout 76. From the very menu, you are welcomed into the game with the same kind of look up, open your eyes, let's go and see the stars and hopefully not die wonder that you could imagine. From the first few moments of the game, you are plunged headfirst into the life of a miner on a barren hunk of rock. And to be honest, I missed most of the first few minutes of dialogue here because I was so incredibly distracted by the visuals. When Todd Howard said Creation Engine 2 is the biggest overhaul and leap forward in many a year, he wasn't kidding. It's such a leap forward that it doesn't even look like a Bethesda game, and I mean that in a very good way. Facial structure, tones, and texture all look just stunning. So do the spacesuits, beautifully detailed. After mining some rock and also see what would happen if I mined someone's face, it's off to the races as I discover a mysterious artifact we've been hired to find. And boom, it's a Doc Mitchell Fallout New Vegas wake-up moment as we make sure our brain and features weren't scrambled by terrifying cosmic energy. The character creator is, as always, markedly improved from previous ones we've experienced. You could spend hours in here tweaking your character to something unique and custom. From tattoos to dirt, blemishes, and nose rings, if you love really making something custom instead of some of the out-of-the-box face choices, you have an ample toolbox to do so. Digging into background and traits, really take the time to think about how you want to play and who you want to be. If anything, this time around I selected whatever, because at launch I want to start over with a very specific roleplay scenario. Stay tuned for the adventures of San Yolo, dashing space scoundrel. After meeting our first member of Constellation, we experience our first terrestrial space battle. Don't fret too much about figuring out if you want to be a melee axe-wielding lunatic or a loaded-for-bear battle-person star Galactica. Just take the time to dive in, because your first real battle with no backup but a slightly sarcastic Vasco on a mission to get you where you need to go comes soon after. With pirates dispatched, we say farewell to our single day as a miner and punch it for outer space. But first, before we continue, I need to tell you a story. It's the spring of 1986, and get your jollies out because I'm technically gaming elderly. With my mom holding my hand, we went into a Massachusetts furniture store, yes, furniture store, and in the far back corner in glass displays and velcroed to the wall behind the counter was a smorgasbord of VHS tapes. Money in hand, we were on a mission from my dad to come back with the holy grail of tapes. Cash changed hands, back into the Bronco we went, and gravel spitting we headed home. That night, cocooned in a pound puppy's blanket, hands met buttery popcorn, and our newly purchased home movie was played. John Williams' score exploded through our speakers. I was plunged headfirst at 6 years old into the marvelous, awe-inspiring space opera that was Star Wars. I was spellbound and completely lost thereafter to the whispered call of the stars above. Even well into high school with friends in summer, we'd head for the nearest field far away from the lights to stargaze and watch the meteor showers. I've been drawn to space and imagining what's out there for a long, long time. I'm telling you this story because for me, I felt that sense of wonder once more as a stupid grin spread across my face as Inanzur's score soared and I was flying through the stars, destination anywhere. The first moment when a person experiences the awesome infinite of space is practically a sci-fi cliche at this point, but a well-loved one. This was one of the first step-out moments that I felt when exiting the vault back in Fallout 3, and the world opened below me. Space literally opens up before you. See that star? You can warp there. Flight in Starfield, whether you prefer third-person or a more immersive first-person, takes some practice in a good way. As mentioned by the team, when in battle, you can dynamically redirect power to increase shield strength, weapons, or engines depending on how you wish to engage or flee from threats. Don't get too frustrated with your first space battle. Remember, you're learning. The game is intuitive here, and for the most part, your first battle is easily won. I use keyboard instead of an Xbox controller, so depending on what you like to use for flight, one may be easier than the other for you. During flight, you can hop out of the captain's chair and go hang out in your ship, talk to crewmates, or even cook up some dinner or catch some Z's. I found myself experimenting with the new photo mode, zooming in and really appreciating how insanely detailed everything is. The controls, readouts, and monitors look stunningly real. The UI in the game is slick and polished, and hell, it should be. It's the future. You can switch readily between local maps, a planet-wide view, a solar system view, or even galaxy view. The grav jump system is your new form of fast travel, with a pleasing hold on to your butts power-up sequence on the heads-up display before you tear a hole open in space and in a flash of light get to where you're going. The trip is essentially instantaneous, so it's not like Star Trek where you're in FTL for a period of time and can walk about while a cosmic light show lights up outside like a New York City nightclub. Spoiler-free story point here, while the trip is meant to be instantaneous, as you learn more about House Varun, one of the new and perhaps darker religions of the wider universe, listen carefully, because the origin of this faith started with an FTL jump. It's important to note that early on your fuel will be limited, so plan your trips accordingly. For the purposes of following the main quest, I went to New Atlantis, and here, right here, is when I said to myself, this game is going to be something special. New Atlantis is a jaw-dropping feast for the senses. It's a massive, massive city, broken up into areas you can travel to via NAT, the city transit system. By day, it's stunning, but by night, the city comes alive with the sound of insects, water, and the hustle-bustle of a city teeming with people. I have never, outside of modding, seen cities so full of people. While probably 90% of them are just plain one-line NPCs, they fill the space and tell the story of a city with people from all different nationalities, languages, and cultures living together. Moreover, you want to stop and listen in on some of the conversations, because once completed, you can start some interesting side quests, or even have some unique dialogue. My first overheard conversation is actually how I want to end this video, so I'll come back to it. Before this, one of the first things I did when arriving in New Atlantis was save. And yep, you know what comes next. The surprise of no one, boxing a UC security officer to death is not looked upon kindly, and I was quickly sent off to the great constellation in the sky. A rollback save later, I side-eyed her and walked on by, the charming angel that I am. It's here that ship customization begins, but I also want to come back to that later on as it is its own animal. Here at trade kiosks, you can, as I did, offload every single thing your junk-hauling self stole as you sashayed away from your life as a miner. Hell, I even stole this guy's sandwich, and his reaction was hilarious. I will say right here and now that junk hauling and scrapping isn't a thing in Starfield, and coming from Fallout, it's a hard habit for me to break. Junk items can be placed in your ship and outpost as decoration, but I found honestly that doing quests, collecting bounties, and jobs netted me more credits than being a sneak thief. The number of credits available is capped, and don't worry about pulling everything out of your cargo hold to haul to the kiosk, because you can access your ship's cargo hold right from the kiosk itself to sell off any trash, weapons, or gear from there. While I can go into the nitty-gritty of crafting, I'll leave the builds, guides, and how-tos to other creators, but it is vast, and also honestly not something to fret too much over in the beginning of the game while you get used to other systems. Starfield has a lot going on, a lot for you to learn and master. It's a game that's been built to keep you endlessly playing in the vein of Skyrim. While your inclination from sheer excitement is to want to know it all, use it all, and master it all right off the bat, take a break. The game has been built to intuitively guide you, adding a piece here and a piece there to introduce each of these new systems. You can't build a Star Destroyer or mansion on Mars right out of the gate. And indeed, advanced shipbuilding is meant to be a late-game thing, so pace yourself. Space isn't going anywhere. In Starfield, while you're limited fuel-wise on where you can go at first, you can really go anywhere. You can land on a barren planet as I did and just explore, walk the entire planet, collecting resources and surveying it as you go. Surveying is also an excellent way to earn credits to buy things with. Once you've fully surveyed a planet, you can simply sell it from your inventory and immediately cash in. One of the first things I wanted to do, however, was answer a question nagging me since the game was announced. What happened to Earth? As soon as I could go to the Sol system, I did. I'm not going to spoil that for you. I want you to go there yourself. And as I did, when you're done, head down into the lower levels of the mast building on New Atlantis. There's a museum there that gives you some really essential info on the history of this universe and a hell of a lot of lore. I love to build. So I spent a lot of my time playing with the building system to master it. As mentioned, when you land in a spaceport, it's here that you can modify your ship, access any ships you own, yes, you can own multiple, as well as sell or even buy ships. In playing with building, I scrapped Frontier, and I ended up regretting this choice later, so think twice, because once it's gone, you can only recreate it, and then it's not quite the same. You can name ships anything you'd like. Opening up the build menu in each landing location will access modules to build with, some of which are exclusive to that location. You can modify and make small changes or upgrade, or scrap everything and start from scratch. You can fully move your camera around any which way, using controls to also position modules you're building with on different planes and levels vertically. Your footprint as far as how big you can build here is limited. Remember, this thing still has to land. When you're ready, an automated system will tell you whether your ship is flight ready. There are rules to building, limits on what you can power, and even requirements for a ship you're building to be finalized. So pay attention to these cues. Weapons also have to be mapped before you can use them. You simply open the weapons menu and then click to decide what mouse click you want for which weapon. Remember that crazy shipbuilding is meant to be a late game activity, so don't get too sidetracked here. Maybe think about not scrapping the Frontier. Starfield is a Bethesda game through and through. But more than that, it really felt like the accumulation of a quarter century of advancements, systems, methods, and lessons learned to get here. There's pieces of all of the other games we've played in here. The photo mode, Fallout 76. Outpost building, Fallout 4. And so on and so on. Like all the little stepping stones it took us in technology and learning to, in less than a century, go from the horse and buggy to walking on the moon. It all culminates in Starfield, and wherever we're headed next. It shows and it shines. Beyond that, there's something to be said for the naked and vulnerable, very untempered, no training wheels blue ocean that is creating something wholly new. Imagine for the team it's been terrifying. But oh man, to be unfettered by pre-existing lore, meta, or design, the team clearly got to flex its muscles. Every game, if it's a good game for you, has a moment where everything clicks and you get it. For me, as mentioned before, was when I strolled into New Atlantis and overheard a conversation of some survivors of a raid. One of them was named Ricardo Bosch, who got a few survivors and a child to safety. And when I talked to him, he said this: Spacers, House Varun, Crimson Fleet, everyone trying to grab their piece. What happened to the early days, huh? When we just float through the stars and dream. And he's right. We're starting this game at the point in our history where despite everything we survive and step out into the stars. And yet at some point we stopped. We stopped questioning, stopped wondering, stopped looking up in wonder, and stopped exploring. I got it. Science fiction, I've always felt, is at its best when it isn't just a cautionary tale that we must change our course now, but also gives us a hopeful vision for all that we could be. A dream to achieve and to yearn for. Humanity has the sad history of taking a universe so big and make it so very small, diminishing it and boxing it in with materials forged by our own petty problems, fears, hatred, and the hunger to possess. Like many of you, I grew up watching the missions in space in the 1980s, where such as yet unrivaled films like Explorers, The Last Starfighter, E.T., Star Wars, Star Trek, and more instilled the wonder of the universe into the mind of a child. I watched the Challenger space shuttle in class on that fateful day, had astronomy lessons in Boy Scouts, and spent countless nights under the stars. But in the passing of years, myself got easily distracted by life and forgot to look up and keep dreaming. Right now, this game is a great reminder that we can be so much more if we choose to be. I'll leave you with one final thought that speaks volumes. I had the great pleasure of getting to know the late, great Bethesda developer Ferret Bowden a little through our charity work and through the Chad podcast. One night, while working on his character, I was sharing some of my struggles as a writer. He told me that writing is like a muscle. Keep doing the same thing, the same motion, you plateau. You have to change it up. Do something different and challenge yourself. Otherwise, of course, you'll still be writing, but it could be great writing. Writing is an art, and it's also incredibly personal. How the writer feels about their best writing may be completely different than how the public feels. He teased a little that he couldn't wait for us to get our hands on Starfield, and for him it felt like the best writing he'd done in a long time. He sadly passed away last year, and tragically didn't live to see how we reacted and enjoyed this game, his writing, and all of the incredible hard work the entire team put in. There's a loving tribute to him in the credits, listed in the main menu as crew. They dedicated Starfield to him. I think Ferret would be proud. This is a once-in-a-generation game, and our journey in the Starfield is just beginning. This is Kenneth Vigu, and I hope to see you out there. Since the dawn of time and the first sparks of life, humanity throughout millennia has looked up in wonder and horror at the stars above. In 2023, we invite you to join us for a journey into the limitless reaches of space and the darkest voids of the human heart. 14 original stories from visionary authors. Frontier Stories from Starfield, launching in 2023. Learn more at starfieldpodcast.com.